Yo, what up, guys? It's Unholy time. You guys have been asking me to make a video similar to the big Frostapalooza that I made in 8.2.5 that seemed to help a lot of people, and I'm really happy about that. I haven't played Unholy as much in 3s this season, or this expansion, rather. I did play it in 2s. We were like number 6 in the ladder at around 2730. But 2s is significantly easier, and Unholy is very strong in 2s. That's that. But, you know, I've played a lot of the games at that MMR. I've done about 1.5 trillion gold carries that have made me millions of gold. And after all of that gameplay, you kind of get a feel for the itemization and traits and essences and all the questions that you ask me. So while I prefer, you know, making a video that I have all my 3s experience on for this expansion, I still feel like I can answer your questions, and that's all you wanted. So hopefully this video does a good job of that. So it's going to be long, again, and to be fair, Unholy could be a lot longer than Frost because it's got way more going for it. So I'm going to try and move it along a little brisker pace. I think we're late in the expansion. You guys know all the kind of mechanics that are in the game. So I'll just kind of try and move through it and answer questions that I think would be most valuable. And I'll still go through my general setup of itemization and then talents and then playstyle, and then we're done. So no more delay because no time to waste. Start with itemization, and we'll just get right into it. So for Unholy, haste. Haste, haste, haste. Unholy has a lot of weird interaction with stats, primarily because of this ability right here, Necrotic Strike. Necrotic Strike's interesting, right? The healing absorption is like damage, certainly not a Mortal Strike effect. It applies pressure that they have to heal through. It stacks with Mortal Strike because it isn't one. It's just a number that they're going to have to heal through. It's just applied in a different way. It doesn't kill anybody, but it really does because of how the game pacing is in BFA. So the healing absorption portion, because it's healing absorption and percentage based, doesn't scale off of strength or fester might or verse or mastery or any of this crap, though it can crit, which we'll get to in a little bit here, but that is very impactful. It can crit. That's in fact the only thing that can modify that number. The only thing in the game besides your opponent's health pool, which you don't control. So if it crits, it's affected by all the crit modifiers, the crit chance, the crit damage, which is 50% in PvP. So it's actually a 50% crit absorb in PvP, which is pretty fun. So that is pretty impactful, and when we're talking about stats, you'll understand why. But the other thing that Necrotic Strike is affected by, not the healing absorption amount, but in its value, is haste, because you can use more. It gives you rune regeneration to press it more, and it gives you faster globals to press it more, which makes haste really good because haste isn't nerfed in PvP, and it still affects all your other sources of damage, your pet damage, your auto attacks, your Army of the Dead auto attacks, your death coil usages because of global cooldowns and runic power generation affected by how much you're swinging, which is haste. A-bomb swings, Unholy Frenzy application of your wounds from faster auto attacks. It adds a lot of damage. The only thing it doesn't affect is your dot tick rate, so, you know, it's adding quite a bit of damage. Which far and away makes haste your most valuable stat as Unholy, especially during your burst windows when you need to spend all those wounds you're generating so fast from A-bomb and Unholy Frenzy. Getting faster globals, this is extremely important. So, haste. Secondly would be verse, because it's just the definitive PvP stat, and much like Frost, you're going to want to stack it as much as you can to keep up with all the damage of the meta. It increases your death strike heals, and it increases all your damage. So your disease rot and your pet autos and everything. Third is crit, and Frost had the same thing. There was a stat that was just so bad that even though crit was nerfed by 50%, the crit damage was, it was still better. I believe that crit is better than mastery in this case, because crit does affect your Necrotic Strike healing absorption, which is huge, because if you're critting in all of those necros, you're popping in your A-bomb window and your Unholy Frenzy window, that is literally 50% more healing absorption, which is actually a phenomenal number for something that isn't affected by anything else. Furthermore, all your pet autos and your Army of the Dead autos and your A-bomb autos can crit, and guess what? None of those are mastery damage. None of those are shadow. So really all you're looking at is Death Coil, which sometimes get replaced by Death Strike, so you're not even pressing that enough, and your disease. And as much as disease is a huge part of your damage, oh, and your Plague Necrotic Strike, the damage portion of that. But as much as those things are a good portion of your damage, the disease itself is applying to other targets, it's applying to pets. Your most pressure is coming from all that white damage, ironically, and all that necrotic absorption, obviously. So Mastery does not really affect either of those things, and is probably going to be your worst stat until the end of the expansion. So that's just itemization in a nutshell. We've talked about it all expansion. I'm pretty sure that should answer all questions there. It's just haste, haste, haste. And we'll actually get into itemization actually a little deeper in the corruption section. I think you guys will like that. It'll be very fun. But for now, we'll move right along. Kind of going quick here. To traits. Traits, very easy for Unholy. There's 2 essential traits and 1 interesting trait, which I'll get to later as to why it's interesting, but I'll talk about it now. This is going to be the easiest section of any section in a video I've ever done. There are only 2 valuable traits for Unholy. They're so much better than everything else, you have to use them. Festermite, Magus. The end. They're just that good. I think every Unholy DK at this point would agree. Festermite is absurd pressure. You have your A-bomb generating more wounds than it does in PvE, because Army doesn't generate wounds. And you have your Unholy Frenzy with all this haste applying wounds faster. You're going to have so many of those bursted. Your Apox is going to give you a huge source, and then you're going to be spamming Necrotic Strike every single global, rocking up 16, 17, 20 stacks of this thing, and it's going to increase all your damage except for healing absorption. But that's pet damage, that's dot damage, that's auto attacks, that's blood of the enemy, fuck it, why not? That's APOC, that's death coils, that's the damage portion of your necrotic strike. It affects all of that, and it stacks up extremely fast. You would be, could be seeing like 4,000 strength from this in burst windows or higher. That is a lot of extra damage. Phenomenal trait, you gotta run it. Magus is great. It has good synergies with a lot of our toolkit. It's applied on A-Bomb, which again is a shorter cooldown than Army of the Dead in PvE. So both of these traits are actually better in PvP than they are in PvE, minus the fact that all traits are nerfed by 50%, but you know what I'm getting at. So they're actually extremely valuable for that reason. Magus, while it can be lined or outranged, still does a phenomenal amount of single target damage, shreds warlocks, does great damage to people who want to stay still. Pretty good at chasing down healers. It adds a little bit of pressure. The Frostbolt's slow. They're just both phenomenal traits, and nothing else even comes close. I would not go for 1 cankerous wound. I would not go, or cankerous, whatever. It's so ineffective, I don't even remember what it's called. It's cankerous something, right? The one that makes your fester... cankerous wounds, I was right. Yeah, don't do this. It's just nothing as impactful as these. The only other traits even worth mentioning are the inners, which of course we want haste, so life speed, elemental whirl, overwhelming power. They're not as important as the Festermite Magus combo, and you need exactly 1 runic barrier still. So once again, we are cruising through the first 2 sections, but that is set in stone. There's nothing really to talk about. It's just that much better than everything else. You can look at Blood Mallet, you can talk to other PvPers, they would agree this shit is too important. So I'm not even going to take time confusing you with other meaningless information when those are all you should be running. Let's keep going. Now we get more interesting. Not only are essences pretty important to talk about, as there's a lot of different choices for Unholy right now, there's also a lot of updates in 8.3, which is this is an 8.3 video. So this is going to be a much bigger section, and we're going to have to talk about a lot of different mechanics in this game. So let's do that. First off, we have the one that I'm using. The big boy, Blood of the Enemy, an enormous amount of cleave pressure, huge critical strike chance on use, and crit damage. So, we did say crit chance is pretty valuable for your burst windows, because when you're spamming the heck out of Necrotic Strike, the only thing that increases that burst window's actual output is crit, because each one of those healing absorption effects can crit. So what does that have in common with Blood of the Enemy? Well, Blood of the Enemy is an enormous burst cooldown that increases crit chance and crit damage. So when you press this in your A-Bomb Unholy Frenzy window, all of a sudden you have a 25% chance to get that huge 7.5% absorb shield. And on ever-expanding health pools of over 500k late patch, I'm already at 472, we're going to be seeing some enormous necrotic strikes and healing absorption, and that is going to put very big pressure, especially in dampening games. Blood of the Enemy is a very interesting burst option, and what I'm personally using right now. for my major essence. The burst is so impactful, and of course, that is just attributing the crit chance to Necrotic Strike. That also gives you crit chance on all your other abilities. It gives you crit damage on all your abilities, your pet swings, your diseases. The actual damage coefficient of Necrotic Strike is now getting 25% chance more to crit and 25% more damage on those crits. That is just way too impactful. And it does an enormous amount of damage itself. And this is all AoE effects. So if anybody is stacked with the target you're hitting, or you do a grip sweep go, it is just added pressure, which is fantastic in comps like Windwalker DK and DHDK. So that is my first choice. But people have been using some other stuff as well, and let's talk about it. One, Conflict and Strife will always be good for both specs of DK. They both give a very BIS PvP talent, which essentially opens up other options for utility talents. And we'll talk about those talents later in this video. But, we've got some good ones. We've got the Zone, the Dark Sim. We've got Decomp and Necro Aura. These just flat out reduce the health of your opponent or make them take more damage. Making them take more damage is good. It also increases your friendly Windwalker's fucking Tiger's Eye Brew or your DH's everything. So you can switch out these things based on what you guys are using or what comps you're playing, and essentially Conflict and Strife gives you an enormous amount of utility or even pressure just from the fact that it gives you Necrotic Strike, which you're always going to use. Not only that, it gives you the effect of having the versatility doubled in stuns, which makes you extremely tanky in kidneys or leg sweeps, and you're always going to be running the Miner because it's incredible, so you just get that baked into it as well. And of course you get that versatility granted by Strife is doubled, which means you're going to be having so much verse. So when we talk about this, it's hard to ignore just how powerful it is. And this would easily be my second choice, and maybe my first later in the expansion if damage gets too high. But just so impactful. Everything I just said about this essence was good. There's nothing I said about this essence that was bad. So it is a phenomenal essence, and if Blood of the Enemy wasn't so fun right now for crazy AoE pressure, I'd be using Conflict. Now there's a lot of talk about Vision of Perfection. I am going to risk the mob. I don't think this is quite as good. I know it was recently buffed. I know it generates a ton of Magus boys to come hit everything with you. I know that it gives you those Army of the Dead ghouls for a little bit more damage there. I know what it does. I can read. But I don't think that's as impactful as the other two at all. It does increase sustained damage a lot, but Magus is nerfed by 50% in PvP. The Army of the Dead ghouls don't do that much damage on their own. Reducing the cooldown of your APOC gives you yet another Magus, but APOC isn't that big of a source of damage either. All three of those things adding up does give you a lot of sustain, but so does Conflict. I mean, add 8% damage to all your magical damage and all your opponent's magical damage, and that's a lot of sustain, as well as all your other options for running Conflict, and the verse, and versatility is sustained damage. And survivability. I think Visions is very, 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 very good. I just don't think it is the definitive, always use essence that everybody else does. Maybe we'll see things change by the end of the expansion. I'll put a footnote in the description if I say, hey, it did end up being the go-to essence. There's really just nothing better. But considering the hype that it's generating, I would have to say I'm a little less high than everybody else. There's no question that it's good. You can't tell me that generating a bunch of Maguses, giving your a good damage cooldown, a shorter cooldown, and some haste and some verse and some army damage is not good. Of course it's good. But the two that I mentioned at the first are the two that I personally would prioritize, and we're going to have to see how the season develops. But that one is that one I'll add a footnote. I always admit in the descriptions if there's something I totally missed, and I'm mentioning that it is good, but maybe it's as good as everybody says, and it's just a must pick. You'd be stupid not to. I don't personally believe that. But let's keep going. Now we'll talk about miners. I think we've gotten a good feel for essences now after this much time. I think I can give you all the miners that you would use and all the ones you would never touch. I think I've got that now. So we're going to talk about the big three. Breath of the Dying, which just got released now, an enormous source of damage and corruption resistance. There's going to be a corruption section later in this video, but the bottom line is corruption resistance is absolutely required. You must have one of these, and it is unique. So you only need one, so you have to run this one because it's by far the best. The damage is incredible. On rank 3, we're getting an execute from it. It procs off of everything. It's a huge source of pressure and healing. And you have to run exactly one of these because of the corruption resistance. This is a must pick in every situation. You will never see my Unholy DK or my Frost DK or any spec I play without this equipped. It's perfect. Crucible of Flame, still a very good miner. Huge amount of proc damage, can heal you as well. Just overall good pressure. And we have Purification Protocol, which I sadly don't have. This is actually my alt DK that I made Unholy. My main is Frost. You'll see that in the other video. But this is amazing now. It's a shame that I don't have it, and I'll have to work on getting it. But absolutely amazing right now. They buffed it, and it procs off of everything just like those other essences. And with a lot of verse, again, you're going haste verse here, these things do a lot of damage, and it'll proc off your diseases, and your pet autos, and your ability presses, and your necro presses, and just, it'll proc a lot. And in dampening games, having all that extra source of damage from Purification Protocol and Breath of the Dying and Crucible of Flame is truly insane. I mean, that's just so much random sources of damage, plus all your verse buffing all of them, and Festermite buffing all of them. So it's those are very good essences. It's funny that I don't even have the essence that I'm saying is good, but if you can't do Teach or whatever the hell. So those are really impactful essences. Now you'll see I'm not actually running one of them. I'm not running Crucible. I'm running Essence of the Focusing Iris. We're going to get to this. And I literally can't talk about it now because there's a whole rabbit hole that I have to go down before I talk about this essence. Just remember that it is here, and we will get to it soon. Before we do that, let's talk about all the trash, okay? We're going to rapid fire here. Blood of the Enemy Minor is not that good, even though the Major is incredible, so you don't need to worry about that. Conflict Major is incredible. I didn't even feel like I needed to talk about it. I talked about it when I talked about Conflict Major. But it's just incredible, so we're just going to move on. We'll get back to you. Spark of the Inspiration is trash. Vision of Perfection you wouldn't run as a miner. There's no way you would run that as a miner. Condensed Life Force is nerfed now, and that is important because I think Purification Protocol took its spot. So I wouldn't run this anymore. World Vein is not impactful enough to make your partners use it as well. That's not good. Lucid Dreams, I think, was chosen by everybody but me. So they were probably right last season. I'm not sure it outweighs all of the crazy proc damage now. I would not personally run this. I think we've got enough haste to make our rune regeneration not need the miner for Lucid Dreams. I wouldn't run this. We talked about this. Ripple is trash. Formless Void is trash. Unbound Force is trash. Boom. Rapid fire got him out of the way. Okay. So that's really everything. There's a lot of different essences you can slot in here. Because of the ever-evolving meta and the different playstyles and the different corruptions that people will be getting, like I said, I kind of left this a little more open than I think you would like. A lot of people just want me to say, here, you run these. But I'll try and go through them one more time to just give you really concrete information the best I can. The three majors that I would ever recommend using: Blood of the Enemy, Conflict and Strife, Vision of Perfection. All fantastic. The minors that I would recommend using: Conflict and Strife, Crucible of Flame, Breath of the Dying is a must, and Purification Protocol. And Essence of the Focusing Iris that we'll get to in a bit. So those are 5. Hopefully that wraps up all the information I've given you about essences, because we got to keep moving. So that's a little bit about itemization. Now we've got another interesting source of itemization added courtesy of Blizzard in the patch 8.3. We have corruption. And this is where things get a little wonky. Let's talk about corruption. As I mentioned in my Frost video that will be released alongside of this one, corruption does some very bad things. When you hit 40, you get a little dude that chases you around and blows up on you, doing a great amount of damage, and all of the other effects, as you can see here, as I have it on the screen, are amplified. based on how much corruption you have. Now that little version of you that chases you around is kiteable and stunnable. How good does it sound to use asphyxiate on a corruption effect? Not very good. But why not just kite it? Well, it actually moves faster than you with additional corruption. And oh, by the way, you're playing PvP. So you're going to be slowed and rooted and stunned and novad and rooted again. And rooted again. And infernal stunned and mortal coiled and feared. And you're not going to be running away from this thing, man. So it's going to kill you. We're playing the tankiest spec in the game right now in DK. And I still wouldn't recommend getting 240. At 40, I think is bad. I think you would stay 39 or below. There are some crazy things you can do that I'm going to get to later in this section that would make going above 40 a fringe choice. But if you are not rocking those exact things, please stay below 40. You will die. I'm at 37 resistance and 40 corruption, so I'm at 3. 3 is good. Let's try and stay low. And I knew everybody was going to be asking me that question, so I wanted to touch on that first. It's very, very important, and that's all I have to say about it. It's pretty obvious. You're going to die to the corruption and Immortal Coil, man. You're going to die into... How many times have you gotten Destro Coiled into Destro Infernal Stun into Destro Root into Destro Shadow Fury? And all that doesn't DR. If any of those things persist, don't get dispelled, aren't IBF'd, can't AMS it, you're just going to die to your corruption in his burst, man. You can't do it. So that's that. Let's talk about the corruptions themselves, though. We know a little bit about them now. Some crazy stuff has happened already in this patch. We have the damage corruptions, we have the procostat corruptions, and we have the sources of stats corruptions. All three of them being different categories that I'll talk about. The damage corruptions, as I mentioned in my Frost video, are Echoing Void, Twilight Devastation, the Gushing Wound, the Mind Flay. I have some of these to mess around with. I still have my Echoing Void from earlier in the patch, right in the beginning there. There's a proc one, and of course my From All Sources. So I have one of each to give you guys a little representation of what I'm talking about. Proc, damage, and all sources. The damage ones, like I was mentioning, there's a lot of different ones, and they all do a little bit different effect, but essentially it's just output more damage from your rotation. Echoing Void got a 50% nerf. So 50% of 20% of my damage is now probably 10% of my damage. Still pretty impactful with my rank 3 that I have. Mind Flay got nerfed from 20% of the target's health to 1% or something absurd for both PvE and PvP. Twilight Dev got a 50% nerf and an internal cooldown of 12 seconds. So that is much less spiky. People were abusing the hell out of that. And Gushing Wound didn't get any changes. So it actually still outputs a good amount of damage. That said, I don't think any of them matter. Because the build that I'm about to give you is going to blow all of those out of the water. I don't think any of them, even with Echoing Void still absurdity. Oh, and I didn't even talk about Infinite Stars. That thing's still insane. Dispellable, but insane. I don't even think that outweighs the build that I'm about to give you. They're all crazy. Infinite Stars probably subject to a nerf. Maybe even Gushing Wound might get a nerf. They're still really impactful sources of damage, and I still don't think they're better than the build I'm going to give you. And no, it's not stacking the proc stats and just trying to get a whole bunch of them and blow somebody up. It's not that either. It's actually the most under-talked about. Is that a thing? The least talked about. That would be a better way of saying that, huh? But nobody saw that. That wasn't in a video or anything that people could play over and over again, and clip and send to their friends. Didn't happen. The least talked about of the three categories of corruptions is the sources one. And I think it's far and away the best thing that you could possibly add to your character. Let's talk about why. I have one of those. Oh wait, no I don't. I have 2. And that gives me 24% more haste from all sources. Well, what kind of sources do we have for that? Well, we have rings with sockets and stats and enchants, and we've got trinkets with haste, and we've got boots and legs and potentially a weapon, and you've got your cloak. Oh, and wait, you also have overwhelming power, which I have somewhere, and elemental whirl, which I have right there. Oh, but wait, you also have Unholy Frenzy, which generates haste. And it says 20%. That's not like haste rating, right? So it couldn't possibly work. Oh my god, it does. That wasn't 20%. That was 26. And oh wait, you even have essences that give haste. And you have on-use trinkets that give haste, and you have Resin's Gleaming Eye, and you can make this have haste on it, and oh Jesus. See where I'm going with this? So with Unholy Frenzy, and all your stats, and all your sockets, and all your enchants, and your essence of the focusing iris that I told you I'd get back to, and your trinkets, when you use all that, oh, and also have 4 of these that increase your haste from all sources by 48%, you are now min-maxing in a comically high way, to the point where it looks like a twink bracket. We are seeing numbers of probably, in PvP, where everything is nerfed still, we are seeing numbers of over, what? Permanently, 50% haste. With cooldowns and procs, hundreds. I mean, you can literally just press this button with only 2 of these things and get over 55. If I had 4, it would be even more obscene than that. If I had a haste with ring on it, I haven't even re-rolled this thing, it would be more obscene than that. What about with this procs, which it procs literally permanently? And essence of the focusing iris procs permanently. We are seeing numbers that just get comical. And with that, you can apply some of the most obscene burst in the game. When you drop your A-bomb and your Unholy Frenzy, and then your APOC, and you spam with a global cooldown that has reached cap now, the smallest global cooldown you could possibly get, with some crit chance and your Blood of the Enemy Major, you are now the highest single target pressure spec in the game that's on demand. Of course, you're not going to do a 300k bolt that the Destros are going to be doing this season, but it's on demand, very difficult to stop, very difficult to peel. Even if your A-bomb gets peeled, your Unholy Frenzy will take care of it with all of that auto attack speed. You have so much single target pressure. I firmly believe that that is going to be some of the craziest interactions that come out of corruptions. But there's even something else you can do. You could get Conflict Major, as we said, that was really good. The badge and the insignia with sockets, preferably. This big old verse ring. Verse, socket everything with verse. That has a lot of verse on it. And then get the plus 48% verse from all sources. Then you could get it On My Way, and maybe the medallion for verse procs. And now you could get, 50% verse with the conflict and the double stack from it, from your versatility granted by Strat is doubled. And if you have 50% verse and you get stunned, you have a 50% wall. And that's pretty good. So forget Echoing Void, my friends. Forget the on-proc stats. Forget the Twilight Devastations. That's all in the past. Why not just get a 50% damage increase to all of your abilities, as well as a 50% wall in every kidney? Why not do that? Why not heal for a 380k Death Strike heal with your 50% increased healing? Why not do that? Idiots. So that's corruption, boys. I've been teasing at this for the DK Discord for the longest time. I gave them some little hints here and there. I knew they were all going to get thrown off by the essence of the focusing iris, but you see the appeal of this, right? If this says it stacks up to 10 times, gives me 37 haste, only a 75 neck, that's 370 haste plus 50%. All of a sudden, I'm just getting a free 185 of a stat from corruption to one essence. One essence now gives me 50% more value than it could have. You are affecting everything you do. You're getting 50% more haste out of Unholy Frenzy. You are getting so much value out of these corruptions, it outweighs everything. And I think firmly that the absurdity of this patch is not going to be the PVE trinkets or the echoing voids. It's going to be everybody racing to have either 48% verse from all sources or 48% X stat from all sources. Mastery for Frost, haste for Unholy. Whatever the fuck Fire Mage is going to do. What is Fire Mage's does 48% haste to all sources and then gets those enhanced pyrotechnics and the overwhelming power and greater pyroblasts you in 0.5 second cast times. I mean, we are just getting into the most excessive twink bracket-esque theory crafting that we've seen in a while, and that is a surprise I had for all of you. Pretty crazy, huh? 8.3, baby! That's corruptions. So now we'll move on a little bit. We've got some talents and some PvP talents. I'm not going to take as much time with this as I used to on my older videos because I think we've really got a feel for them this late in the expansion. I don't have to tell you why certain things are bad. So I'll just rapid fire it real quick. And I'll answer the important questions rather than the stuff everybody knows. The first row is important, right? All will serve and Infected Claws are both very good. Infected Claws has more value because Necrotic Strike is more valuable than Risen Skulker's damage. But it also can be useless because in your burst window, you probably wound caps because of how much haste you'll have. Even if you're not using my insane build, you'll still have a lot of haste from Unholy Frenzy. So this has more value than All Will Serve, but can also be completely worthless. So if you find yourself, just watch your own gameplay. If you find yourself overcapping on wounds, don't run this. You can get a lot of extra pressure from All Will Serve, and you'll have so much haste that he'll be firing real quick. So that was a bow, by the way. Forget that ever happened. Anyway, those are the two talents in this route. Please don't run Clawing Shadows. Bursting Swords and even Fever now is a choice, which is pretty interesting. Bursting Swords is really good that it's better now because sometimes you want to use Long Dot to stop Argerids from drinking, and now your choices are much more valuable. Bursting Swords is your choice to run Long Dot because Long Dot means not having a shortened dot, and I have this over the screen so you can see exactly what I mean by that, half the duration. So you'll sometimes run that longer dot to have it persist on the Argerid who can't dispel it, and then you can use Epidemic to stop the drink. And that's been a huge part of the metagame for this entire expansion. So that makes Bursting Swords have a lot of value against a lot of comps. That said, even Fever is still more single target damage, I think. It's very hard to get a test for this. Nobody really has the numbers on that. Nobody can say, oh yeah, I simmed it, I ran the numbers. Because Necrotic Strike isn't something you can run the numbers on. Nor is PvP ever really simmable. So you don't really have the answer between what truly provides more single target pressure. I am leaning toward even Fever. Bursting Swords is still really, really good in your burst. It gives you 25% necrotic absorption. That's what it was changed to do. The tooltip doesn't reflect that. Don't worry, I know it works. So that is yet another toss-up. But I would go with Bursting Swords on just about everything because you can use it to stop drinks. Long Dot is very valuable. Even Fever, if you find yourself just needing a little bit more single target pressure, maybe at a ranged, like you're getting somebody really low and then they kite you away and they're like, oh my god, if I had even Fever here with that dot tick would have killed him. Again, a situational choice. Asphyxiate is the only thing worth running here. That's great. We can move on. Soul Reaper and Pestilent are also both really good. With all the haste that I currently have, I've been running Pestilent because I have so much wound generation from A-Bomb swinging faster and Holy Frenzy swinging faster that this is proccing like crazy on my opener, and I don't have to use any globals that aren't Necrotic Strike in my opener, and I have crazy openers. So once again, another toss-up generated, my choice generated by my personal haste build that I'm going to be running. But it's crazy how much situational choices are available in Unholy right now, and I'm hoping that you're I'm moving a little quick, but you're seeing what makes each one do what. Soul Reaper just gives you 2 runes, but you have to use a global on it, which I don't want to do in my burst. Once again, another toss-up. Spell Eater is immense CC prevention, and I've never not run it, but Wraithwalk is pretty impactful. It gives you a root break, and while you're root breaking, you can catch up to your target because you go real fast. And they can't slow you. They can reroute you, though, which is a real shame. It's a 1-minute cooldown, which is also a shame. Spell Eater is my go-to. Having 11-second AMS with trait is 11 seconds of poly prevention, root prevention, fear prevention. And it's even damage reduction, so you can't get punished if you use it aggressively because it'll still be up fucking a lot later too. 11 seconds is a long time in burst windows. It's essentially an entire burst window, so I always run that. Epidemic, I think I'd always choose nowadays. I used to use Pestilence just for memes with D&D Necros, but because the entire row was completely unimpactful. But now Epidemic has overtaken it in every situation. It stops drinks, it keeps people in combat when you flare it up, and it actually does okay damage if you press it on a huge amount of pets from a demo lock or an Unholy DK. It actually does a great job rotting the pets, but it also flares up and hits everything around them, so it hits your target as well. Makes it sometimes better than Death Coil if there's a lot of pets around. Pretty crazy. You'll see some high damage numbers in the details meter. This is a no-brainer. Gargoyle has been trashed the entire expansion. I think Summon Gargoyle, the talent, is why I'm frustrated at Blizzard right now. This is a talent that's iconic to Unholy DK. Iconic, right? It's been in there since the beginning. It's been a huge source of burst in prior expansions. It's been something sometimes people would kill or line. It's been that impactful. And this entire expansion, from start to finish, it has been trash. Nobody has ever picked this talent. Imagine spending time creating an ability that is an iconic part of a class just to make sure that nobody takes it. This could literally be fixed with a single tuning pass. Just increase the damage dealt by 25% or something along those lines. It would have to be tested briefly. But that is just absurd that this has never been run. Army of the Damned probably has more value and it scales really well with haste as well. But I cannot give up the amount of burst that Unholy Frenzy generates. It is too good. That's what we're running. Okay, that took a little longer than I expected it to, but we'll move right along PvP Talents as well. I've gotten a lot of information on this through all of my theory crafting the entire expansion, so I think I can just go straight down the line and tell you when you'd use stuff and why it's good and when you wouldn't. First off, A-Bomb, despite all of its nerfs, because it applies wounds, and we love wounds so much with Necrotic Strike, and Necrotic Strike is still good, A-Bomb is still good. It gives you a Magus, it still does some decent damage, it actually gives you an epidemic or an outbreak usage, which saves you a rune and a global in the beginning, which is kind of cool. And yeah, it's just giving you those extra necros, and with all your haste, he's still swinging pretty fast after the nerfs. So A-Bomb is a pretty good standard pick. Necro is the other good standard pick. While it was once again nerfed, the Bursting Swords brings it back up to the 5%, and health pools are going to be at 500k. So we're going to be still seeing some pretty big healing absorption from Necros. What is that, 25k? That's good. It's good. 25k a button press is good, especially considering how fast your globals are. And that's 25k healing absorption. It still does damage. With Fester Might, you can get that over 10k. So that is 35k a button press. Rapid firing those out, you can get up to pretty obscene numbers, and that's a pretty core aspect of what makes Unholy good right now. So Necrotic Strike still, after all the nerfs to this talent, is still a core choice. Which leaves you with one or two, based on if you're running Conflict or not. And what would you throw in that one or two? Well, AMZ if you're playing against a Spell Cleave or Rogue Mage. So that handles that. If you're not, it opens up Decomp, Necro, Lichborn, Transfuse, and even Dark Sim. Out of those, I would say Necro is the most generally applicable. It increases your damage by a lot. And any caster's damage you're playing with, if you want to play DK Destro, try that out. DK S-Priest, I know, has seen a lot of play from some pretty talented players on ladder right now. That's a Necro choice. Even DHDK has a lot of spell damage. So that is a pretty good default choice in those comps. If you're not running one of those, you could try decomp, like in Windwalker DK or TSG. Now you've reduced their max health, so your Touch of Death window gets even scarier, because they're not healed up as much, and if you're bursting them down a leg sweep, all of a sudden they have less health to work with. And then there's some other situational uses. If you find yourself dying, like Jungle does absurd damage right now, or you're getting peeled by RMP, You could run Conflict and Strife and get the fourth talent available, which is AMZ and Lichborn. Lichborn breaks the stun, the cheap that they're going to put on you, the kidney, the roots, the fear from the priest if it's RMP, all the slows, although you're self-slowed, but at least you're not 70% slowed. And it also makes you immune to poly when used. So it essentially shuts down their entire CC toolkit, which is phenomenal, especially if you want to run at the disc like Mongoloid. So there's another fringe option. This also works against Warlocks who have Fears and Coil and Shadow Fury and Infernal Stun, and they don't move, so the slow doesn't matter. And it works against melee cleaves if you're dying, or jungles, like I mentioned before, if you're dying, because it gets you out of the stun and gives you a long wall on a shorter cooldown. And it gives you a stun break on a shorter cooldown, and it gives you a fear break on a shorter cooldown, and a root break on a short cooldown, which is phenomenal because Disc Jungle has all those things. So once again, you're looking at the comp, you're seeing what I've said about these PvP talents, and you're choosing one based on what you play against. So I won't be able to tell you exactly what you're going to queue into, but I can give you the toolkit for each comp and the reasons why. That leaves only Dark Sim, which against like MLD as a spell cleave with Conflict and Strife, you can use AMZ, and then you can use Sim, and if your team is topped, you could Sim a GPI, right? And then you could use your burst window and try and finish it off with a quick, swift 150k hit. That is nothing to scoff at and incredibly impactful to gameplay. You can also steal polys, but man, 150k damage is more fun. And that would be, I think, all of the useful PvP talents currently in the meta. Cadaverous is crazy healing or magical absorption, and it ends up being healing. But just cannot outweigh anything else. Reanimation is a meme, don't play it. Life and Death is not valuable enough, don't play it. I don't personally think Necros is pretty good. I might get some backlash on this, but I don't care. I think they're wrong. I think it doesn't even outweigh the army damage sometimes if a healing effect isn't applied. I think it's not good enough. Transfusion is very powerful, and you can run it in combination with Lichborn if you find yourself dying, but I don't think people are going to be going DK that much. And if they are, then run this. And that's everything. So what do you notice about PvP talents? Well, you don't get a select PvP talent to run. A lot of the times when I'm asked questions, when I get DM'd from the DK Discord, or there's questions in the DK Discord itself, it's like, what 3 PvP talents can you run? And nobody's going to be able to answer that question. If you see a YouTube video that gives you a talent setup and it's like, run this always and run this always, it's just wrong. So you're not getting valuable information. I know, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you an exact setup that you can just copy and run in with. If you want that, just try the one I have right now. This is pretty general. But what you should really be doing is looking at all the comps in the game and what tools they have at their disposal and what they want to do to beat you. What do they want to CC you? Do you need to get out of it with Lichborn? Do they want to kill you? Do you need to sacrifice damage for Lichborn's survivability? Do they want to kill your teammates with magical damage? Run zone. Do they not want to do any of those things and they're kind of just a sustained comp that you can't counter hard with any of those talents? Run decomp. Try and get the pressure switched on their side. These are the choices you're going to have to make, and there's so many different comps that you could possibly play this patch, and so many comps you could run into this patch. You're going to have to just see what I've said about the PvP talents and make a decision. I hope I've given you... I said it pretty quick. Watch it a few times if you want to go back. Those are all of the things that these PvP talents do, and some of the things that you wouldn't expect to think about. And hopefully that will then help you answer those questions in the future. If you have anything else, you can always hit me up in the comments section, of course, and on my Twitch when I stream, you can ask me questions about specific matchups, and my DMs in Discord. Feel free, ask me specific questions, but I feel like I am running out of time. I don't even want to look at how long this video is going, so there's talents. I pray that that gave you at least a little bit of general information, because I do want to help with that sort of thing. It's just a hard task, man. It's a tall task to actually give you a set of PvP talents to run. They're all impactful in different situations. The end. Finally, we're going to get into ability usage, rotational changes from PvE, strats and comps. It's going to be a whole big section together. It's going to be the last section. I really hope this video is not over an hour and a half. I haven't checked. But let's do that and finish this video strong. So people ask me a lot about those types of things, like what changes from PvE to PvP and what comp are you running, what comp should I run. Let's try and address some of that stuff right now. I'll start with comps and strats because I generally don't give that enough time, and I'd like to give that a little bit more time now. What I think is going to be good? Windwalker DK, DKDH. Both still good with Unholy. They're still good with Frost as well. They're good with both. We know this. Unholy DK Guardian's probably still good, as much as it pains everybody. Unholy DK TSG could come up. It was fine last season. It could be even better now. We're going to have to wait for the meta to develop to find that out. I think Unholy DK S-Priest is phenomenal. And Unholy DK Destro could see some love. Already, by seeing the varied comps, you can kind of get a feel for what changes you would make. Oh, and those Windwalker DK and TSG comps, I'd probably run Decomp Aura more often. Decomposing Aura. I shorten things too much. I hope you guys understand. In the Necro Aura would be very useful for the Shadowcleave, the Destro DK, or the S-Priest DK. So that's some of the talent comp changes that you would obviously make. Those are 5 things that I could see being very impactful. But how would you play them, right? We know, and there's the grip sweepers, the DHDK and Windwalker DK, where you grip the healer into the DPS and you sweep or Chaos Nova all 3 players. You stun them all, and then you do all your bursts. You do your Blood of the Enemy, your A-Bomb, your APOC, you just burst in those windows. It gets trinkets, it puts them behind, they're in bad positioning, they can get CC'd out by the healer on your team. It just puts them in a bad situation that they don't want to be in. You do that every single time those abilities are up. And it applies pressure and puts the enemy behind so they can't reset up on you. Will I be able to go over the comp decisions for every single enemy team? No, right? You've got MLD where you can't sweep all 3 of them because they're not going to be standing on top of each other. So what do? Well, you grip one of the DPS or one of the healers to the DPS, or sometimes you grip the DPS to the DPS if the healer's an R-Druid and is staying max range, or because you're dying and you need to peel. There are so many situations that can occur. They're actually not even useful to put in a YouTube video. What would be more valuable is for me to talk about a stream that I do, and I make a highlight out of it, and then talk about everything that I do in like a commentary afterwards, which is coming to this channel this season. So there you go. But in this section, you kind of I'm trying to open up the thoughts of like thinking, what is their win condition? What is our win condition? How can we make those things happen? And how can we stop theirs from happening? With S-Priest DK, you're going to be rotting people. So you're just going to sit on a DPS and stop their damage as much as possible. Peel for your S-Priest and get pressure on all 3 until they die in a asphyxiate to silence combo. You do great into dampening because you have swap and disperse and DK healing and fade. So all of these comps have different matchups and different scenarios they want to put themselves in. So I'll make some VODs and commentate over them, and hopefully that will help get a feel for those. But open up the mind to thinking through like all of the information you've got so far. How can I make this happen? Do I need to grip the healer into both of these DPS that are stacked on top of each other, stun all 3 and do a crap load of damage? Or do I just need to grip away from my S-Priest or Warlock to peel for them best I can to survive longer and get more burst windows and rot their team and their healer and dampen it? It's the kind of decisions you would have to make. But we do know a lot of useful situations that will occur. Against RMP as Windwalker DK, they can kill your Windwalker, they can kill your healer, which means since you're the one not being killed, you're going to have to throw some of your effects and your utility abilities out the window just to save your teammates. So if you're in a 4-second route and you are looking at your Windwalker who's across the pillar, kidneyed, and they pop cooldown, so they pop combust, you literally need to trinket or wraithwalk that route, get over there and pop AMZ, anti-magic zone, on your Windwalker. He's going to die. You save or you use your cooldowns to save your partner's either cooldowns or life if they don't have anything, because you're not going to need them later because they're not going to go you. And if they do go you, then you could probably live, because Death Strike is an ability that should be somewhere on your bar. But, right, so if you're looking at a spell cleave, you're going to be on Dark Soul and Infernal and Combustion. Combustion and RMP, Combustion Vendetta on RMP. Arcane Power from Arcane, I might see some more play this season. Volt's got rank 1 with him. Congrats. These are the cooldowns you would want to use Anti-Magic Zone on your teammates generally, because they won't go you with AMS and Death Strike. And sometimes you'll have to trinket things to get there. Sometimes you'll have to trinket an AMS to prevent any future CC if the priest is coming in for a fear to get these things off. You shouldn't just sit there. And I'm guilty of this too, especially earlier in the patch when I didn't recognize how absurd Burst was. That's when I hadn't played a lot of rated. I was playing more RBGs, sadly. So you'll have to recognize, hey, I can't sit this 3-second cheap shot. My teammate's going to die. I have to trinket, run over there, and AMZ. I have to peel for my teammates. And everybody could do that better, myself very much included. So that's a useful takeaway from this. Moving on to the rotational differences between PVE and PVP. Death Strike is a huge part of your rotation. If you're ever taking damage, if you're getting trained, press Death Strike. If you're rotting, press Death Strike. If they're a rot cleave that AoEs a lot, press Death Strike. If they're a melee cleave that cleaves a lot, press Death Strike. Death Coil is not impactful enough, it does not do enough damage to warrant not using an 80,000 heal every global. I mean, you can't skimp on that ability. Death Strike should be pressed. Other changes, don't press Scourge Strike. With today's health pools and how wildly they've scaled, Necrotic Strike has really just replaced Scourge Strike in your rotation. You'll press it every global. It's just better. It's more single target pressure, period. You don't need the runic power generation that comes with bursting a wound or whatever. And the damage from bursting a wound certainly is nice, but doesn't outweigh a 25k healing absorption. Just doesn't, so bummer. Press Necrotic Strike. Some other changes, keep chains on every single target for sure. We know that. It's this ability right here. You know what's really funny, and I'm going to make a side note. My video has been staring at my... this is a talk show. It's not a video. Here, you know what? At the end, I'll show you the Blood of the Enemy burst. It'll be real fun. But anyway, yeah, press Chains of Ice right here on my bar. Other things, take your bad boy pet stun off auto use. Don't use it as a stun. Use it as a pseudo interrupt. Always let your friends, your partner's pet stun, or your partner's leg sweep or hodge, or other leg sweep from your Mistweaver Monk or bash first, or your Onus Fix, and then pet stun to like pseudo interrupt on a cast right before you kill them, or on an Aura Mastery cast from an H-Pal, or on a G-Pie that's going to go off and it's going to end the game. You got to pet stun it. Of course, you have Pet Kick as well, which you can manage pretty effectively with Pet Move, and on the healer is very valuable because it'll always be in the range to do that. You can throw them pretty off balance, especially at lower MMR, by, you know, kicking the DPS that you're on. Like say you're going mage against RMP, and you kick the mage's G-Pie, and then the priest tries to cast, and you pet kick that, and all of a sudden with all your pressure and neither of them are doing anything, it throws them off balance. Pretty useful tool. Otherwise, you know, you've got your A-Bomb, which increases your wound generation, so Festering Strike should be almost never pressed. During your burst, it should literally be never pressed. And maybe I'll throw on War Mode while I'm talking about this, right? And we will see just how impactful that wound generation is with A-Bomb, and show you that if you're pressing Festering Strike very often, I know that's one of my biggest tells to players that I'm trying to help generally in RBGs. Our Festering Strike is just pressed all the time, but we don't have a reason for that. Festering Strike is just a wound generator. It doesn't do much pressure at all. And if you have so much wound generation in your opener, why bother pressing it? So yeah, let's take a look at that burst window and kind of get a feel for everything we've been talking about so far. We know that I have a lot of haste. I have the trinket, and I have 2 sources of the corruption. So without further ado, let's see how ridiculous this is. So you drop your A-Bomb, you Unholy Frenzy, you prop Dark Transform, 1 Festering Strike press, And then you never press it again, because here's the blood of the enemy, and damage. Just Necros. Look at this. I'm not even using my runic power. We're eventually going to press 1 to get runes back up, but this is just... I mean, it's insane, man. We're talking 180k burst cleave with blood of the enemy while applying 500k healing absorption. It's asinine. And you'll notice... 1 press. I think that's how I'm going to end the video, boys. The accumulation of all of that knowledge and everything that I've said, it kind of shows in the way we should be playing, right? That was stupid amounts of cleave damage while maximizing healing absorption from Necro Strike and single target pressure from Necro Strike. And that's how Unholy PvP should work. 1 press, man. You've got your wound generation. You know how your burst should go. Your blood of the enemy burst. The Necro is applying so much pressure. Bursting swords won't do that much in PvP, but man, it's fun to look at, isn't it? That's the setup of Unholy right now. We got to see everything in action. Focused energy was stacked up to max with my haste corruptions, and we've got my haste trinket proccing over and over. Blood of the enemy burst. We've seen it all. That's it in action. So now it's your turn. Find the right pieces. Grind the right essences out. Develop that beautiful playstyle of spamming 1 button until they die. And make sure you zone combust. Because when I didn't, my teammates died, and I was very sad. And they were very sad at me. I think that's all I got, boys. I hope that helped. Very long, very wordy. That's just me. I'll be free to answer any questions about specifics. Again, there's no way I can go into comp details for all of the possible situations. It's impossible. We'd be here for another 5 hours. I'm here. I try to answer questions. I tried to give you as much general information as you can work with, and hopefully those highlight VODs with commentary will be available very soon and give you more insight into what goes on during the games against different comps, different play styles. The end. I love you. Good night.